We're going to get started in about 2 minutes.
What? All right. No, the world's chaos. What are we joking? I mean, we should all be drunk by noon right now. Are you kidding me? It's a disaster.
We're getting through each day.
It's completely fucked up.
Your mic was on.
It is 6:32. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Crane,
Here.
Esri,
Here.
Farney,
Here.
Fava,
He's here. He just stepped out.
Furtado, Greer, Hanauer Friedman,
Here.
Lakshin,
Here.
Pugh,
Here.
Rodriguez, Rogers,
Present.
Sexton, Storr, Sollard,
Here.
Present.
Here.
Wiggs, Wilson,
Here.
Cagle,
Here.
Carter, Cowart,
Present.
Locke.
Here. I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda and any addenda. Okay. Mr. Sexton and seconded by Wilson. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Anybody like to move to approve the minutes of our February 11th meeting? Lakshin so moved. Second, Ms. Rogers. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. I have no slips. I see 2 members of the public. Would anybody like to speak? No, we would not. Moving on. No public participation. Communications from the board. Mr. Farney.
Yeah, I just wanted to take a second to thank so many of the board members that reached out to me over the last week or so while we've had some deaths in the family and funerals. So I really appreciate the kind words. Thank you.
Ms. Lakshin.
Just a reminder that this weekend, starting actually on March 13th through the 15th, is the boys IHSA state basketball tournament at State Farm Center. It'll be all over the place because they'll be at hotels, they'll be at restaurants, so be aware for traffic. Also, IHSA Special Olympics of Illinois Unified Basketball State Tournament will be the 14th and 15th. It's a big impact on visitors to our community, so be gracious, welcome our guests, and try to be patient as they make their way around town.
Any other communication? Dr. Storr.
Thank you. Dr. Kisa Mwakanyamwale Gilkey and Dr. Jason Thomason are going to speak about the HTEM project that we paid for, an overview of the use of airborne geophysics for groundwater resources at noon this Friday in the old Hydro Systems building, now Civil and Environmental Engineering, for those who may have an interest.
Mr. Wilson.
It starts at noon. I think I said it was 1 at caucus, but it's noon.
Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. Happy Purim for it's Thursday night from March 13th through Shabbat on March 14th. And for those that don't know, Purim means lots, and lots is because the individual that wanted to destroy the Jews in the 4th century cast lots on what day that event should occur. And so it's a Jewish holiday that celebrates Jewish deliverance, that commemorates the saving of the Jewish people from annihilation at the hands of a top-ranking official in the 4th century BC Persian Empire. So this historical event is recorded in the Old Testament book of Esther. In this story, this official, Haman, second to the Persian king, sought to destroy the Jewish people in the kingdom of Persia, which is what? Iraq today? Iran today. His plot was discovered by Queen Esther, whose cousin Mordecai at one time exposed a previous plot to assassinate the king. When the king found out about this, he decided at that time to rescue the Jews and allowed them to defend themselves. So anyway, happy Purim.
Any other communications? All right, seeing none, we'll move this right along. Finance with our new finance chair, Hayanauer Friedman.
Okay. So, starting with budget amendment 2025-2-104, Fund 508, Nursing Home Department 410 Administrative, increased appropriations $14,429.30, increased revenue zero. Reason appropriation of nursing home sale proceeds to cover outstanding invoices. Can I get a motion? JJ and Eric, second. Any discussion? So we received about $150,000 from the sale proceeds, and this is coming out of that, and this is going to cover funds to keep the software and files updated as required. Okay. Can we take a vote? All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign? Okay. Next we have, motion passes. Next we have Budget Amendment 2025-3-6, Fund 1080, General Corporate Department 140, Correctional Center, increased appropriations $150,000, increased revenue zero. Reason additional funds required for out-of-county boarding until the jail consolidation project is completed. The sheriff is here tonight, but can I get a motion? Lockshin and Sellard. And discussion. We do have the sheriff here if there are any questions. As I'm sure you know, we originally approved $375,000 for this. He's only asking for $150 at this point, and whether we will need more funds or not depends on construction. Yeah, Jeff.
Thank you, new chair. You're doing a wonderful job. The couple questions for the sheriff. Thank you for being here. I'm not completely sure when the new jail can be fully functional. Maybe the facilities chair would know, but is it this month or next month? Or is there a date certain when it'll be actually to be occupied?
Work is still ongoing, but it appears by the end of April we will be completed. That's the best of my knowledge as of talking with Eric within the last couple days.
If we're anticipating end of April for occupants, then will there be another request for funding for out-of-county boarders next month?
If necessary, is my understanding. Dustin, do you want to speak to that?
I'd love to. Good evening.
Welcome, Sheriff.
Thanks, Jeff. So, speaking with the jail superintendent, we're expecting that inmates are hopefully going to start coming back the first week of April.
First week of April.
Now, we all know things have been postponed, things get sped up and different stuff like that, and the inmate population itself, we're getting into warmer weather, and so we traditionally see more arrests and stuff when it's warmer out. So it's very much unpredictable, but I am confident enough that we'll have inmates back in April that I changed my request from 375 to 150. Now, I don't want anybody to be surprised if I come back and ask for more money, but I'd rather do that than ask for a lot more money and then not need it, and then you're wondering what I'm doing with it. So that's kind of where we're at with the request.
About how many individuals are housed outside of county?
Today I have 75 housed out of county.
Okay, and that changes. Will it change between now and the end of April? Yes or no, maybe?
Oh, absolutely. So the majority of inmates will be back, if not all, and that will all depend on classification. Our jail, we're pretty consistent at 75 to 80 out of county. What's not so consistent is, for an example, I think on Monday we had 20 people waiting for arraignment that were arrested over the weekend. However, so that's 20 more in custody here locally that today we probably don't have because they've already been through arraignment. They've been either detained or released. And so that's really the fluctuation that we're dealing with. So if you're looking at the jail stats, you might see the jail stats here in county fluctuate more than what you might see the jail stats for out-of-county inmates.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Sure.
And then one more question about the general fund. Would it be possible, since it seems like each month we're taking more money out of the general fund, to have a running total of what we're taking out of the general fund and how, actually more in detail, how that's affecting our fund balance?
Yes, and actually, we've already asked Travis to work on that, and I believe he started that for us. So we'll have that hopefully very soon to share. I know he's been sick, so. Michelle?
Yeah, the first half of that is at your seat in front of you. It's this. This is the budget amendments that we've done from the general fund so far this year. And these are just budget amendments from the general fund with no accompanying revenue with them.
May I ask for some additional information then on this? One would be the obligation that's taken out of the general fund was remainder in the general fund, and what is the percentage in the general fund compared to the overall budget? Can we put that on the sheet also?
Yeah, he's working on that. Apparently that's like complicated math and stuff, so it's just not quite ready yet, but I know the goal is to have that on there, but I will make note of that for him as well.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, let's take a vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to Budget Amendment BUA 2025-39, Fund 1080, General Corporate, Department 140, Correctional Center, increased appropriations $18,021, increased revenue $18,021, reason appropriation of grant funds from the Bureau of Justice Assistance. Can I get a motion? So Aaron, second. Beth? Discussion? And our sheriff is still here. Seeing none? Can we get a vote? All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Okay. Budget Amendment BUA 2025-310, Fund 2658, Jail Commissary, Department 140, Correctional Center, increased appropriations $182,782, increased revenue 0, reason pilot project for 24/7 inmate healthcare. Can I get a motion? JJ, second by Lakshan. Okay, discussion, and our sheriff is still here if anyone has questions. JJ.
I don't have a question. I just want to thank the sheriff for thinking outside of the box, helping us with the general fund on this, and doing the legwork, getting the legal opinion that allows us to use the jail commissary funds. Jail commissary funds have to benefit inmates, obviously healthcare benefits inmates, and so I want to thank you for getting that in writing so that we know we can do this, and I'm excited to see how this program works for you.
Any other discussion? Oh, sorry, Jeff.
Maybe we should range the tables just a little bit. Thanks again, Sheriff. I agree with my colleague, Mr. Farney, thinking about outside the box, but probably people that are watching this or listening to this conversation may not have a clue what the pilot project for 24/7 inmate health care is. Can you briefly explain that?
Absolutely. So we do not provide 24/7 coverage of medical staff in-house. And so what that means is, and generally through the night, if there is a medical emergency or there is an inmate who comes in that needs medical evaluation, that inmate will be sent out to the local hospital. And so what this and it also puts a lot of liability on my correctional officers because they're assessing an inmate and the medical needs of that inmate when it should be nursing staff that's doing that and not my correctional staff. And so we were presented with this opportunity to pilot. Now, it's not the first time we've heard of a 24/7 medical coverage. Peoria County, for an example, does it, but it costs a lot of money. And so we were presented with this opportunity to extend our current contract and add that 24/7 coverage. And I thought it was a good opportunity to kind of evaluate it because I'll be going out to RFP later on this year in order to get a new inmate healthcare contract. And I think it's in the best interest of the county to evaluate now at probably a lower cost, whether that's something we want to invest resources in, or if we want to maintain the status quo, or if we want to reduce coverage. That's a conversation for a different day. But this will provide medical staff in form of an RN, at least one, on-site 24/7, 365 in the Champaign County Jail. And so that will be able to address and make concerns for medical issues. Now, we're not talking about a heart attack or a seizure or something like that. We're talking about an inmate who has a headache or an inmate who maybe has something that would ordinarily be put off a little bit until medical staff was back on site. Now those inmates are going to be able to have those medical needs addressed in a more timely fashion.
And then one more. How long, what's the duration of the pilot program?
So this will go from May to May. The amount that I'm requesting tonight will take us through the end of fiscal year 25, and then I'm planning on requesting the remainder from commissary for the 4 months. I think it's 5 months, the end of May, for the additional 24/7 coverage. By then, we will have the new contract in place. We will know exactly how much it's going to cost. I think the important part about this, and JJ kind of mentioned it, is this is not coming from the general fund. And so it says zero revenue, but this is a fund that has to be used for specific things. And so that money cannot be used for other things other than the benefit of an inmate. And so if for some reason the contract is not negotiated yet, this is the quote that I've been given by the healthcare company. If for some reason that would come down lower, which I don't expect it will, that money will just simply go back into the inmate commissary fund at the end of the year, and it'll be there for us to use for inmates next year too. So we're really not out anything if things fluctuate a little bit.
Thank you very much, Sheriff.
Any other discussion? Yeah.
Exactly, where do the funds come from? The inmates or?
So we are a relatively unique county in the fact that we don't charge inmates a lot of extra money for the things we give them. Some of the things we do are for food, for an example. So not everyday meals, but if they want a soda or a candy bar, the county itself makes money on that. And then we put that in this inmate commissary fund that then by law goes back into inmate welfare. So programs and different things like that. A lot of counties will actually charge, which you may be aware of, a lot of counties will actually charge extra money for phone calls and different things like that. We don't make any commission on that, and so that money does not go into that fund. But there are certain things like those extra commodities that aren't necessary, but they're luxuries in incarcerated. That money goes into that inmate welfare fund.
Matt?
Could you speak to, I don't want to put you on the spot too much here, but just kind of your understanding of why this would come out of commissary versus general health provisions?
So I believe that the general medical contract is an obligation of the county to provide for inmates. However, this is above and beyond what we are currently providing for the inmates. And so we've already budgeted for the general medical contract for this year. All of this money is going for that increased service to inmates. And through the definition and through the state's attorney's office, we both believe that because it's above and beyond what we would normally provide, and it's directly impacting the inmate, that this is a justifiable use of these funds.
Good evening,
Oh,
Sheriff.
go ahead.
I think I heard you say Peoria County has been doing this. Do you know how long they've been doing this, and what kind of results have they obtained from, or benefits have they received from this?
I don't off the top of my head. We've started seeing some more counties go to 24/7 coverage because with pretrial reform, the inmates in custody are staying with us for a while because those who have not committed a offense that could potentially cause a public safety issue, the judges are letting them out. And so with that, we're seeing an increased mental health issues. We're seeing increased with the opioid epidemic. We're seeing an increase in overdoses and withdrawals in jails. And so we're starting to see more and more jails pursue this 24/7 coverage. As far as comparing counties that have gone to this or not, I don't know the answer to that. One thing I will say is that counties I have spoken with, and I generally do a lot of research before I come to you guys and ask for more money, healthcare costs are astronomical, and they're going up every single day. I mean, you all know that from our employee healthcare. And so during this RFP process, I will expect a significant increase in our coverage for just what we have now, which is why I think it's going to be important to pilot a 24/7 before we actually commit to it for a 3, 4, or 5-year contract. But I can't answer. I will say that the 2 overdoses that we've had in the jail, the 2 overdose deaths we've had in the jail in the last 2 years have both been in the middle of the night when there's not medical staff on scene. I'm not saying that would have changed anything, but we tend to have more medical issues during the night than we do during the day, and we traditionally don't have medical staff during the night as much as we do during the day.
Stephanie and then Jamala.
We discussed this in our caucus. One of the reasons we're able to do this at this time is because this fund balance is particularly robust, given that we went through a pandemic followed by a construction project, followed by, and at the same time had a significant number of our folks incarcerated out of the county, which meant that some of the other pressures on this fund for, say, programming or something like that were not there. So it allowed this fund to grow at maybe a rate that would have been higher in other times. And we discussed that during the budget process, thinking about a holistic view of this fund, not just like where like we could see this fund balance going over the next few years. But I do think it's really important to note that that's one of the reasons, and I want to echo the thanks for coming up with a way for us to do this, was made possible in part by the robustness of that particular fund balance because of those factors. It is, though, I think important to note that thinking that that fund can sustain this long term is not tenable. And so I think that that's why thinking about this as a pilot is incredibly important, and then we would have to have a more comprehensive conversation about how to incorporate that on a more long-term basis.
Jamala.
Stephanie's statement kind of took away some of my question, but I'm still going to ask it. So with taking $182,000 from this fund, are we cutting any programs, or is it preventing us from bringing back programs that we previously had that we could reinstate now once the jail is open?
It is not, and I would say that any new programs that might cost a significant amount of money would not be implemented in fiscal year 25 anyways, because a majority of the programs we currently have in the jail are ran by volunteers. And so we may have different supplies and stuff that we need, but this is not taking away, this is a very healthy fund balance for this fund. And this is not taking away any kind of programming or anything in the foreseeable future that we'd have to make a compromise between this or that program.
Thank you.
Eric?
Thanks. Dustin, I think this is good. I support it. I think it's an appropriate use of the commissary fund because what you're telling us is it's an enhancement, a benefit. I think, we see this total here. You seem well prepared, so I feel like I can put you on the spot. Without this coverage overnight, you've indicated that, a lot of problems happen in the night, and this makes sense. Anybody knows that it's at midnight when your appendix explodes. It never explodes conveniently while you're parked outside of Carl. Do you see the potential for actual cost savings? Because I'm sure when you call for medical assistance in the middle of the night and you put your deputies on the spot to make the call, whether they call an ambulance or not, there's costs involved with all of that that maybe could be ameliorated by having an RN on site can decide, triage this and decide what they're doing. Do you see it as a potential cost savings or at least a break even on having the 24 coverage?
So it's a very subjective question, but I will say that it only takes one lawsuit for millions and millions and millions of dollars for the county to be out. And I would like to think that we're doing all we can to prevent that. And we can't prevent all lawsuits, right? But if we can see a need to where maybe we take that out of somebody who's lesser trained than somebody who is more trained, and we put that in the hands of somebody who's more trained, that just reduces our liability. The other thing I will say is that we do have access to contact nursing staff 24/7, so if there's not a nurse on site, the correctional officer will call them. 95% of the time, they're going to say, send them to the emergency room. And at that point, then it's taking at least one correctional officer off the streets or overtime to that hospital for who knows how long, when potentially that could have been observed while in custody. We're not talking about a real bona fide emergency, but with no alternative. They were sent to the emergency room, maybe admitted, where before they could have been monitored at the jail, and it would have saved the county a lot of money.
As litigation chair, I appreciate anything that reduces lawsuits.
As somebody on all of those lawsuits, thank you. I appreciate that too.
Stephanie?
I just also want to remind the board that the one thing that we're able to provide for free right now is 2 free phone calls a day, and that is at a no cost to the county. There is no guarantee. We were actually quite surprised when we were able to bring that in. There's no guarantee that that would go forward. So just keeping in mind all of this as we go forward into the next budgeting cycle. And I do think we should always triage the core health and safety of the people under our care. And then the other things that we can do, if we can, are on top of that. But that would be another potential pressure for this fund on a long-term basis. Right now it's not, but, that could change at any time or, after this contract is over.
Anybody else? Great. Yeah, I would just add I support this as well, but also share my colleagues' concerns about costs moving forward. And so look forward to, I know you'll provide us with detailed feedback and analysis of how this pilot goes and what that means for looking at the numbers when we get the RFP out and are looking at next year's budget. So I think we're ready to vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, B, next we have County Executive Resolution establishing the Reconciliation Fund. Can I get we're not voting on this though, so is there any discussion? Are we, I'm sorry, we are voting, okay. So can I get a motion? JJ and Aaron? Any discussion? So just to reiterate, Normally, funds don't need a resolution, but this is for the repayments to Carl and other hospital systems on behalf of the county as well as other taxing bodies. JJ, yeah.
So, Michelle, question for you, and this may be me just nitpicking things, but in the resolution, we use the term, in the hospital property tax exemption cases. Should we be more specific on these, or did you get guidance on that, or?
This is Joel Fletcher reviewed, and it's that very long, awkward term because there's different types of cases that could go into this fund from that whole concept, though.
Any other questions for Michelle or discussion? Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, County Clerk, approval of amendment to predictable fee schedule for recording documents. Can I get a motion? Beth, second. Jenny Lockton. Discussion. No, Angie's not here. JJ.
Just want to make sure, I don't see where this actually changes any of our fees, is that correct? It's just putting it into a document that is required by the new state law?
I believe they are changing, at least some of them. Jen?
So, during the Dem caucus, unfortunately, the clerk's office couldn't be at this meeting, but during the Democratic caucus, Ms. Patton came and spoke to us, and she said the only thing that's changing is that state agencies used to have their fees significantly reduced, and now they have to pay the same fees as John Q. Public once we pass this. JJ.
The state has taken enough from us, it's about time we get something back.
Any other discussion? Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. D, Regional Planning Commission, intergovernmental agreement between County of Cook, Illinois, and the Board of Trustees of the University of Illinois and County of Champaign, Illinois. Can I get a motion? Beth and Eric. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Number 2 is a request from the Champaign County Regional Planning Commissioners regarding the county audit non-compliance. So I hope everybody had a chance to read this letter. This was expressing their extreme concern over the late audit. I know we've discussed this at length, and we're all aware of the funds that were put at risk and that were stopped and programming impacts. So is there any discussion on this? Yeah. Chair Locke.
Thank you. I just really want to read the very last few sentences here so that it's clear to anybody at home, and then I have some pontificating to do. But it says, the work of RPC is too important and too critical to our community to allow these continued service and project interruptions to occur. To that end, RPC seeks the county board's assistance in putting in place the appropriate financial management measures to provide accountability, and which then allows RPC to continue the work of empowering the community without interruption. That is a very reasonable request from them, and I would just suggest that the next item on our agenda is an action the county board can take to prevent service interruptions in the future. That's all.
I guess I'd like to just add, it's unfortunate the auditor's not here. I was told that he would be, unless I'm not seeing him. JJ.
I also was going to ask, the auditor some questions because Back on November 15th, the CEO of RPC, Delitzo, he sent us a memo, and I'm not sure that all the things in that memo from November have been addressed as well. And those include delayed monthly financial report closings, delayed posting of cash receipts, inaccurate payroll postings, delays in reconciliations, and the capital asset reconciliations. So I'd like to know if those have been taken care of as well, so that we can make sure that the things that RPC is asking for are getting taken care of.
Yeah, I agree. And again, I wish that somebody from the auditor's office were here to answer our questions, because these are a number of pretty serious concerns that we've had for some time now. Eric?
Chair.
Can we as a board ask the auditor or representative to come to this meeting?
When you have time.
Steve?
The reason the auditor is not on the agenda is because he submitted no report. He had indicated he would be submitting that report today. Megan checked, and we've received no report today. So that's why he's not on the agenda.
But to clarify, he did tell me he would be here, and he's not. Jeff?
Thanks, Chair. Oh, a couple comments. One, is this memo going to be placed in the meeting minutes in its entirety?
It's in the board packet, which is accessible on the county board, the COW agenda website. Like the agenda packet is available to the general public. I know at least one person in the crowd who's probably read it. It's available, and you can go back for years and years and years and look at the COW agendas. So it will already be in it. So
It's already on the
available.
website, is what
Okay.
she's saying.
So next item. For the benefit of those that are listening, the 5 specific concerns are as follows. Cash draws suspended. Grant execution or modification prohibited. Negative impacts on future grant awards. Fiscal infrastructure indicative of systematic weaknesses and risks. So that's the fiscal infrastructure in whose house? The auditor's house?
Yes.
All right,
And-
thank you. So there's systemic and persistent weakness in the county's fiscal infrastructure have negatively impacted the Regional Planning Commission. And when the Regional Planning Commission is impacted, critical safety net programs such as emergency rental assistance, energy assistance, weatherization, early childhood programming, community services, homeless prevention, supportive housing, and workforce development is all impacted by thrice or 3 times running late audits, the way I read this. And finally, number 5, because of the late audit, we have a negative, RPC has a negative impact to Head Start programmings, which I assume, I don't know how many students, there's 811 enrollment spots. So that affects a lot of students in the Head Start program. And seems to me that's unacceptable.
I would agree.
And then third item, what are some of the considerations that the county board is taking for preventative measures per this ask to prevent this from happening?
So if I may move us on to the next item, that is what we have one thing that we can take concrete action on right now. I think, unless anybody else wants to speak on the late audit in general, I think we've spoken a lot about it, but you want to speak about the late audit?
Or just about, in addition to the measure that we are asking the board to talk about next, the two material findings that RPC is referencing, one had to do with the timeliness of reconciliations, and the other had to do with reports. While I cannot speak to the report thing, and I'm not entirely sure how we as a body can address that, what we did do with reconciliations is we moved them from the not happening status in the auditor's office back into the treasurer's office. She has hired somebody specifically to do that work and is making substantial progress, and everything I've heard about this person's work has been glowing. So this person, unfortunately, is catching up on an entire year of reconciliations, and then we'll also then have to address this year. But that piece of it, I do think I can say with confidence, is being addressed. And then, as Chair Locke said, the next action item agenda would allow us to especially address some of the items, particularly item 5 that you mentioned, and we're really most of these, except for the fiscal infrastructure one, which was the one I was just speaking about. The other 4, I think, will be substantially addressed by the next item agenda.
Jenny?
Oh, you're already on. Just a quick, you said he's not on the agenda because he didn't submit his report, but I mean, he is on the agenda, and that we're talking about his office. We're talking about the letter from RPC in addition to discussion of the Act for Preparation step, which is the next item on the agenda. I would have hoped that he would have been present to talk about the things we can do to fix this and make sure the audit is not late in future years. So, I'll leave that on for you.
Jeff?
Thank you. Of these 5 items, the audit was finally put in the portal about January 6th, I think, this year. So of those 5 items, are there still lingering concerns, or some of these concerns have been resolved?
I would say that most of these concerns are still relevant. When you're going for funding, even though we're back in compliance now, it hurts your overall record, so to speak, right? And then there are internal logistical pieces that are still, I think JJ referred to some of them earlier in his comment, have not been put into place. So yes, the concerns are still very much with us. And obviously, as Stephanie mentioned, we're catching up on reconciliations. So the chances of next year's audit being on time is still a question mark.
Thank you.
Anybody? So let's move on because we do have something that we can do about this, and I think our PC and the entire county deserves some action. We are unfortunately limited in many ways as to what we can do, but this is something that we can do, and this is the ACFR, which we've heard much of in relation to the audit, was a big piece of the audit. We've been in conversation with our external auditor, CLA, and getting estimates from them on how much it would cost to have them take on that piece. So taking that burden off the plate of the auditor's office. And it's my understanding that this is actually pretty common to have the external auditor take care of the ACFR. It's not like we'd be doing something totally out of left field. So we got estimates from them on that. At the same time, we also received an estimate for them to do a one-time cleanup / setup of a couple really key documents that are used kind of as the foundation for the audit each year. You may have heard our auditor mention at one point a delay was due to an Excel spreadsheet that broke down. This is one of those important pieces. And so we asked CLA for an estimate on them fixing that critical document as well. So just to share some numbers with you all, first to keep in mind, we also had Travis calculate for us how much it cost us in how much more we spent because the audit was late this past year. So we ended up spending an additional 48,000, little over 48,000 in payments to CLA just because of all the extra work. And then we also had to pay our very valuable staff member, Orion, in RPC, who actually did the ACFR and other key pieces because he worked way overtime. And so that was an additional 14,000 as well. So just keeping those figures in mind, then the estimate that we got from CLA for their annual fee for the to do the ACFR is about $20,000. So that is something we can consider. The one-time setup of that Excel spreadsheet would be about 49,000, but that is also an essential piece that we don't really want to break. So it's the finance committee is strongly in favor of us outsourcing these two important pieces. And I'll open it up. Yeah, Chair Locke.
You've done an excellent job summarizing. I'm going to give a little more detail if that's okay. I don't want to step on your toes. So it's not that the 49,000 is an optional thing. Like that would be a required for them to take it over, and they would basically build to standard, not to what was broken way back in 2017 and has been used ever since. And I see Mr. Farney nodding. How we've been doing it for a very long time, not just this administration, but going back, how we've been doing it has not been good or proper and contributes to the late audit. But what they would do is they would use our audit from this year and like the numbers from this year to build it out before the audit begins, before the legwork begins. And that would be a one-time thing. And our contract with CLA is not in perpetuity, but they would allow us to keep this information. They wouldn't say, oh, it's ours, proprietary, we're keeping it and you have to pay someone else to do it. They said, no, we would work with whoever our successor may be in the future. So that 49,000 isn't 49,000 now and then 50 grand to somebody else 2 years from now. It's 49 to set it up and then it goes forward. And then it's 20,000 a year. And 20,000 a year is way better than paying partner overtime rates and paying an employee service and extra above his salary. And also, Orion has let us know he can't do it again. Like he was working till 3 in the morning this year doing this. He can't do it again. It's not his job. He doesn't work for the auditor's office, so he won't do it again. So, so that. And then I spoke with Auditor Danos over the weekend. We actually had a friendly conversation, which no one in this room may believe, but George and I had a friendly conversation about this, and he is agreeable in principle to us having the ACFR prepared outside. He believes that there's enough in his office that they should be doing and could be doing, and they can do more timely if this is done elsewhere. And in speaking with Travis and in speaking with Hope from CLA, it really is, Ellie's right, like they do this for 60 to 70% of their clients. Like it's not outside of bounds. This is actually a very normal thing. My husband, the audit professor, was shocked that we don't have them do it. So he's not an expert in municipal law, but he still was shocked that we were doing part in-house and having the rest done out. So it's all, I support this as well.
Aaron.
Yes, thanks. So this is just discussion tonight, but the next step, if the majority of the board, when will we see that next step? And do we need to somehow tonight indicate if the majority of the board, do we like a thumbs up? If, we want to go ahead with this? I mean, that's my only question, I guess.
I think we should do that if possible. We need to get moving pretty soon, so CLA can get moving pretty soon. Eric and then Beth.
Thanks. So just like quick math, we spend $62K extra, basically, to get this all fixed up last year, and we were late. It's $7K more to have this one-time $49K paid for, and then we're about 20, so we save about $42K a year. If it gets the audit in faster, then I think it's worthwhile. If I had $1 for every time I heard ACFR come out of the auditor's mouth last fall, then we would all be out drinking on me because it came out a lot and it was always late. So I think that's good, and I agree with Aaron. I think we need to indicate tonight how we want people to proceed with this so we can proceed with this as quickly as possible. So.
And I would just add, and it will save us potentially millions if we don't have to deal with lost grants and the like, assuming there's still federal and state funding moving forward. Beth.
So if we are paying for the audit to be done outside of the county, why are we paying for an auditor again?
Matt and then JJ.
I was going to ask the auditor about time and office savings and how he could use this additional time to other areas that need it, but maybe I could look at Mr. Farney's way to weigh in on what portion of a work day in a year or a workload in a year this might be helpful to turn attention to other items, I guess.
What I was going to say, I think it kind of speaks to your question and in a way to your colleague to your right or to your left there. The auditor's office will still have a very important role in this. They are still preparing the financial documents that that we have to prepare internally. So there is going to be work that has to be done by, at the very least, a chief deputy. Whether or not we need an elected auditor, that's another question. But the actual work traditionally is done by a chief deputy. They will still need to be preparing those documents, those statements that then get rolled into this document. ACFR is really like end of the year, we're bringing everything together into one document. Okay, and so that's what Clifton would be doing. Where this is going to help is that the chief deputy, instead of trying to prepare that document at the same time that they're doing those financial statements, they're concentrating only on the financials. They're not rolling it all into a document to be put out for publication, which is a mighty task itself. So I think that this will allow the employees in the auditor's office to do more of what we want them doing for the county. It does not address an elected official at all. I'm talking about the folks that are doing the everyday work that we expect from them to have done throughout the course of the year. The other thing that I just want to caution everyone on is this is a document that is compiled encompassing all of county government, which is other elected officials, other department heads. We're dependent on them doing things in a timely fashion as well. So there still could be delays. Clifton can't go and tell the circuit clerk, I need this document today, and they don't have it ready. They can communicate with them and things, but they can't just make things happen. Just like the auditor couldn't make things happen. So I just want to caution us to know this is not a guaranteed fix, but I think it's a step in the right direction, especially allowing the folks in the auditor's office to do the specialized things they need to do once they get that data from department heads and elected officials throughout the county. I think that really would free them up to do the work that they need to do. So I'm definitely in support of this. There's many other counties, including counties that have elected county auditors that do it this way. The city of Champaign does it this way, and they're financially a larger entity than we are. So, I think this is a good thing. But I just wanted to caution us that this is not guaranteed to be the fix. There are other things that we can continue to work on. RPC brings up some great things for us to continue to address. It's a general county issue. We need to, just because we've always done it one way does not mean it's the best way to do it. And yes, the Excel, and we say an Excel spreadsheet, it's a huge file. It's all encompassing. Lots of numbers are tied and they go across pages and different departments and things. It is an absolutely huge file. So, and it was starting to have problems going on 8 or 9 years ago when I was in office. And so to undertake rebuilding that is a huge task as well that I think Clifton is better prepared for than we are internally.
Jeff?
Thank you, Chair. A couple questions. Just for the public, so ACFR means Annual Consolidated Financial Report. What does ACFR stand for?
JJ?
That's the annual comprehensive financial report.
Comprehensive versus consolidated.
Used to be called CAFR, Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. They changed that a couple years ago.
All right, thank you. And then next question, is there a recurring cost? Is the recurring cost annually 20,000?
Yes, the recurring cost is the 20, the 49 is just one time upfront.
Oh, just a minor comment. So if that action is taken, which I agree to, by the way, but if that action is taken, then does the auditor have to not roll his sleeves up high enough or as much? And if so, he doesn't have to do all that coordination that was previously not done on a timely basis. Does that mean that his salary should be reduced?
Chair Locke, you want to take that?
You may recall that within the last year, we set his salary for the next 4 years. The office's salary has been set. We can't change his salary at this time. It is worthy of discussion in about 3.5 years when that comes up for decision again.
Just a point well taken, right? If someone's roles and responsibilities are diminished, then the compensation I think in the private sector would be commensurate with the decreased role. And if it was increased role, then the compensation should follow that trajectory. So just a minor comment.
If we were in the private sector, we wouldn't be in this situation. Anybody else? Okay, so do we want to do a thumbs up? Those in favor of having CLA do our ACFR and one-time setup of the giant Excel spreadsheet? Okay. Looks like, oh, yeah, Beth?
Is it possible we could see about maybe a bidding process versus just going with the auditor's office? There are third-party companies that do stuff like this.
I mean, they're already under contract to do our audit, so like, I don't think you would want a different entity doing these key pieces of the audit than the people actually doing the audit. But when our contract's up with them, we
No,
could
I'm
certainly.
talking about the Excel spreadsheet, not the audit.
Well, I think it's part of the audit essentially. But yeah, did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, it's when they prepare it, it counts as part of their professional work. Like, we're referring to it as the ACFR, but when speaking with Ms. Wheeler, she just called it financial reports. It's the financial reports that they need to do their job as our contracted outside auditor. So for this point, no. Going forward, when this contract is up, that's a possibility. But Ms. Wheeler was very clear that they would also just hand this off to whoever.
Okay.
Stephanie?
Yeah, so since CLA has been involved in the last couple years of audit, they have much more granular level understanding about where some of those breakdowns are than any other firm would. So my guess is if another firm had to fix the spreadsheet, it would be more than $49K because the like getting up to speed costs, we don't have as much of that with CLA because they've lived with what the problems are.
Jenny? Oh.
I would also just add that we don't have time. Like, an RFP bid process is a minimum of 2 months, like minimum, and that's like a quick one that goes smoothly and you have no problem. So I think that's always important to keep in mind when we're talking about, are we bidding something out, is how much time do we have?
Okay, so we had the thumbs up, so I think we've given administration the go-ahead to move forward with that. Okay, I have no chair's report. And for the consent agenda, we have A1, 2, 3, and 4, B1, C1, and D1. And that is it.
Excellent first time. Um, Moving along, policy, personnel and appointments, Chair Store.
Thank you. Monthly HR report is in your packet. I'll kind of just say that the sheriff's left, but we spoke quite a bit about the trying to do out of county housing and our hope to bring all those inmates back to county. But we're down 7 correctional officers in the adult jail and several still looking for officers for juvenile detention. And so we've got a lot of vacancies and very important tasks to do for the county. I'd like to ask Ms. Jett to discuss the next item, general personnel policy regarding tobacco, which is legally obtained item.
So we don't have anything formal in our general personnel policy. We do have an old resolution where we, say we're going to abide by the Smoke-Free Illinois Act, but I don't think it's fair to our employees that we don't have something clearly outlined in the personnel policy. And we've had a couple inquiries from multiple departments recently who've run into some situations where they didn't know how to address it because we don't have anything written in policy. So this is just an attempt to put some guardrails around a actually pretty complicated and unclear personal use issue, I think, to a degree. So what you have in front of you as a proposed policy has been run by the state's attorney, and it's also been run by all of the department heads numerous times. In fact, I think they're kind of tired of hearing about it from me, but I was really trying to get feedback from them on the different dynamics they have in their offices, because, everything from corrections officers to administrative staff, those are different uses and different shifts and all that kind of stuff. So I think we've come up with something that covers everybody, gives the employees some guidance, and gives department heads some structure that they can rely on when they have an issue.
Mr. Farney.
I noticed on the memo you have Chapter 11 for tobacco use. Chapter 11 is the workplace anti-violence according to the policy that's online.
Everything would get shifted down.
So you're going to shift everything
Yeah,
down? Okay. Okay. And then the other question, I guess, that I have is the general county personnel policy does not apply to the offices of elected officials. So are we setting a double standard here? Do we need to look at, should this be codified in an ordinance instead of just being in a personnel policy? Because if it's not addressed in, say, the circuit clerk's policy, they don't have to follow this one.
So what we do quite a few times on these very technical, kind of dry issues is we put something in the general policy and then make sure the department heads know about it, and they just copy and paste it into their department policy, maybe with a few minor tweaks that apply specifically to them, but it gives them the structure of what to work off of, which is the original intent from this. And then you also things can get a little gray when you're talking about, as this one is talking about very specifically, county property. So just because it might not be adopted by an individual department head, if it's something that is occurring on county property, the personnel policy has some impact.
And at Bennett, are there going to be any designated smoking areas outside of the 15 feet that we're providing shelter or waste receptacles or something like that?
Yeah, so we are going to provide a smoking shelter. Basically looks like a bus stop, for the most part. It will be on the north side, which is the back side. I am personally going to be working with the department heads extensively to reduce the amount of people who are out front of the building smoking, and strongly encourage everyone to use the smoking shelter that will be in the back area, that will be outside the 15 feet, but very as close to the building so it's accessible to them. And I imagine that we'll need to look into installing smoking shelters at all of our buildings in the sense of fairness and equity for all employees, so.
Eric?
Yeah, I talked about this in caucus. I won't be quite as facetious here, but these smoking shelters are not free. They're targeted for a small group. I know smokers. I've been in love with smokers. I live with smokers sometimes. And we have other employees, me being one of them at the U of I, which is smoke-free, by the way, and doesn't provide these shelters, but you can see people smoking everywhere. We have this expense that's aimed at just a small group of people for what is arguably a legal habit. There's other legal habits. I don't suppose we're going to allow other kinds of smoking in these. You're going to be very specific in the policy of what kind of smoking is in it. But we're looking at a tight fiscal year, and now we're looking at another expense that I don't know if it was built into the building budget for the Bennett Center, or will there be one here because we'll still have people here. I assume there's going to be one over at corrections, at the jail. It's not a minor expense. What is the advantage of this over just becoming smoke-free and making people go sit in their car and hide behind a tree and do all the things they do on campus?
So just to clarify, everything, it's the Smoke-Free Illinois Act, but as Member Thorsland was alluding to, we could do what the U of I does, which just says no smoking at all anywhere on our property. It's an option. I think that it would be pretty morale devastating to our employees, and I'm not sure we want to pick up that fight right now. Yes, the smoking shelters will have a cost to them. We're still looking into it. I did plan to use moving funds to purchase the initial round of shelters. We anticipate they're going to last for decades. They're not, they shouldn't be, getting graffitied or anything like that. So, aside from the startup costs, we don't expect there to be extensive ongoing costs. But yeah, we also then need to think about putting them at all of our physical locations, courthouse, Bennett, jail, animal control coroner's office, highway probably should have one if they don't. So there's a variety of places they need to be, again, for equity and fairness. So yeah, if the board wants to have the conversation of going completely smoke-free, that is absolutely an option. We can do that. There's a lot to consider there. I would suggest that we pass this policy and then have that conversation if that's truly what you want to do. Because I think that's a pretty robust conversation that we need to have that involves employee feedback and dialogue and collaboration with.
When you do know what the cost of a shelter is, could you share that with us? Because I know when we were talking about C-carts and bus shelters a while ago, bus shelters are a little different because they're on the public right-of-way, but they were not cheap. They were quite expensive. But
Yeah,
maybe
I
some
will
of that was
absolutely share that. And
engineering.
I will get a concrete number of how many we think we need to get.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Van Vinich, there or not?
Thank you. Given how our healthcare costs keep escalating every year, I have an extremely hard time accepting the fact that we are going to spend money to enable people to practice a habit which raises our healthcare costs. That is not my opinion. That is study after study after study. Smoking is one of the most harmful things you can do to your body next to drinking, and I don't see us setting up bar stools outside. So I'm not okay with spending more money on shelters. I'm not okay with enabling a habit that is costing us money. And I would much rather that money go towards smoking cessation policies or programs than enabling a habit that is ultimately bad for us, bad for the people who are practicing it, bad for the county.
Ms. Jett, do we have a smoking cessation program as part of our benefits package?
So we actually are, we had started talking about it with Gallagher last year, and then between the significant rate increase and the detailed conversation we need to have about the HCA, we weren't able to continue it. So I have already reached out to them that we do want to pick up the conversation again about smoking cessation support within our program, within our health insurance plan. So that is on the docket. I think that, personally, I think there's a pretty bright line between supporting someone in making a better choice and forcing them to behave in a certain way. And again, I think that if that is the conversation we want to have about being smoke-free, it needs to involve a lot of communication with the employees themselves.
Ms. Rodriguez?
This is a discussion only, right?
Actually, it looks to me like we're going to vote on something.
Okay, I just want to add, like, this is getting kind of weirdly paternal. I'm okay to move on.
Ms. DeFarney?
I'm going to support tonight's policy. I'll make that clear. I agree with everything that Beth said. A little history on this. Back in 2007, when the Smoke-Free Illinois Act passed, I was clerking county board meetings. This was something that was debated nonstop. It was a huge issue. We definitely need to have dialogue with the employees about it. The other part of it, though, is that the cost of those shelters at that time would have been a large amount. And the board, again, it got debated and debated and debated, and ultimately the board decided not to put up those shelters. And quite honestly, if it comes to us about paying for shelters, I would be opposed to that as well.
Ms. Rogers?
Oh, sorry, that's right.
I just have a question. Can we pass the policy without agreeing to pay for the shelters? Because it looks like the resolution says that we will put shelters in place. Am I reading that incorrectly? It says, no, I'm not.
It's the old resolution.
Oh, that's the old resolution. Okay, so that's not what we're voting on? We're just voting on passing a policy, but we're not voting to actually agree that we will put shelters up.
Yeah, I'm not making any changes to resolution number 6272. That one is staying exactly the way it is. I'm just asking that we add this chapter 11 from the memo into the general personnel policy.
Oh, okay.
And we can absolutely separate the two issues. We can do the policy and then come back to the conversation about shelters at another time.
Okay, thank you.
I would like us to come back to the discussion of shelters and get a price estimate on those. I agree, that's not what we should be spending money on right now. And I probably don't want to volunteer myself for something else, but I was on the committee at the U of I when the U of I went smoke-free. That had a lot of those conversations about talking to employees, and I've heard it all. So if we go down that road, I'd be happy to be involved.
Mr. Cagle?
Appreciate it. You mentioned early on in the first part of your comments that you had concerns being raised from section heads and managers, but then also other staff. Do you have I don't want it to get into like an HR issue, but do you have like a breakdown of what percentage it is that's management and what percentage it is that's just regular staff?
I think it's kind of both, and honestly, the majority of the complaints, actually I think all of the complaints that we've fielded recently have been about smokeless tobacco, particularly spitting the stuff. I don't know the terminology well on those issues, and there have been complaints ranging from, someone using the trash can in the break room, and the staff that have to clean that, or the staff that have to see that, or doing it in their office, things like that. So that was another point to this, was our original ordinance, as you can see, has no mention of smokeless tobacco. So we wanted to also incorporate that concept as well and put some parameters around that.
Oh, Matt?
Thank you. First, I wanted to say that I agree with what my colleague here has just said about smoking cessation being a long-term goal. But I would disagree, I think, a little bit in the way that it's considered enabling. They're going to be smoking anyway. The question is, do we want it happening in the front of the door where the smoke's coming into the building and affecting other people who are not smoking? Or do we want to have a designated area that can be out of sight, to the back of the building, away from the door where the public's regularly going to be in a spot that won't be impacting others who are not smoking, as well as have a place to spit?
Thank you. Mr. Thorsland?
Yeah, if you go to big old airports, if you go to train stations in Europe and stuff, Europeans love to smoke. They don't build shelters, but they do have an area that's marked, and this is where you go. And if you're not in that area, then, this policy fleshed out could address, that you were in front of the door, that you were standing where you weren't supposed to be. I think that the difference between putting up a post, a sign, and one of those dispensers to throw your butts into, and a spittoon apparently that's necessary, is different than building a whole shelter for people. I know it's easier to say go into the shelter, but you could say go to the designated smoking area. And if it's raining out or snowing out or damn cold or really hot and they don't want to go out and smoke, maybe we get them a little closer to 1 or 2 less a day and they start thinking about cessation entirely. I understand that people are going to smoke. Believe me, I do. But I don't think we need to build them a really nice place. And I'm not saying these will be nice, but, spend a lot of money to put up a place when we could put up a sign that says, you smoke over there. And that's it. And then make it clear to the department heads that their employees or them, if they need to really be over there. Because I don't like running the gauntlet outside of a bar to get inside. And I have other habits that I don't do in front of people in front of the door of the Bennett Center, because you'd probably be mad if I was doing burnouts on a motorcycle or something over there, which could be considered smoking too. But yeah, I think that, I'll support this policy, but I really don't want to support a big expenditure just to enable people to smoke.
Yes, Mr. Yes.
I move to call the question.
Okay, apparently I've also set the settings. And question's been called, and I think I can kind of, as a point of further order, say that we're voting on a policy and not on construction of structures. So, all in favor of...
You need a motion in a second still.
Oh, I'm sorry. Motion? Is there a motion? Actually, I failed to get a, yes. Thank you, Ms. Locke. Second by Ms. Lockshin. And question's been called, and I'm sorry for not getting the order correct. And all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Oppose? The motion passes unanimously. And we can go on to the next item, appointments and reappointments. Resolution appointing Marcus Shaw to the Prairie View Cemetery Association. Moved by Eric Thorsland, second by Mr. Sexton. Thank you. Discussion? There being no discussion, all in favor? Aye. Aye. Oppose? Motion passes unanimously. There's a number of vacant appointments that are coming up. There's a whole bunch of forms in your packet. Will be for fire, cemetery, drainage district, and so we'll be getting to those next month. monthly fees in the packet. Next item is item C1, appointments to the Carbon Sequestration Activities Task Force. And I will limit my remarks to only an hour and a half. No, I have circulated or given the chair and had some discussions with Mr. Hall, colleagues, and Chair Locke about a mission for the carbon sequestration ordinance task force, and it's fairly brief, so I'll read it. Protect public health and safety by evaluating the potential vulnerability of water resources from underground carbon dioxide storage and sequestration, and developing comprehensive ordinances to regulate carbon sequestration and gas storage activities within Champaign County. I will circulate the mission statement, my anticipated timeline schedule of meetings, and some other items that relate to developing categories of relative vulnerability to local aquifers from subsurface gas storage. I guess what we should, since this is for discussion only, does anybody have any questions, or would they like to make a comment? Ms. Locke?
You did that before I even raised my hand. All right, so at ELUC this week, there was a vote to create the task force, and then at the full board next week, we'll be voting on that with the consent agenda, and then we'll be voting for the members of this. So if you happen to know anybody who feels very strongly one way or the other about the future ordinance that we're going to be passing, and they really want to be involved, pass them along to us for consideration. But the idea is to pedal to the metal on this, so because we have that 1-year moratorium, and we'd still have to pass through zoning and everything. So the idea is that we'll be going very fast and very far, and that is why Mr. Esri will not be joining us, because it will be during farming season. But the idea is that a very fast but thorough and informed turnaround, so that we are making an informed science-based decision and not just succumbing to panic or fear or whatever, but so that we can show that we had a studied, reasoned idea behind it. So that's coming next week. There'll be members put before you, and just, vote your conscience on that.
Mr. Esri. I'm sorry, Eric?
Sometimes we're interchangeable. Yeah, just to not in all cases. I was thinking more.
He doesn't have a mustache.
I was thinking more in an organizational capacity. We have farmed. Some still do. Just to remind Chair Locke, I asked in ELOC that not be on the consent, that even though it was unanimous. So because we'll have discussion, and I believe we'll have audience people here, but I would urge the board to pass that next week. We do have some schedule that we have to try to adhere to. Chris made some indications about the schedule he thinks the task force can do, and we'll see, but I won't hold you to it. But yeah, we need to move it along. John Hall in the office has sort of a timeline. It has to go to ZBA before it comes back to ELOC and then back to the board. And we are now 2 months in to our 12-month moratorium. So we need to get this done before then.
Thank you. Mr. Cagle?
Just a quick question. Has anybody been approached on ELOC or others, even in passing conversation informally, of businesses that are interested in taking advantage of this if there weren't a moratorium, where they were able to actually go and do carbon sequestration? Or is this anticipation of that from somewhere else?
Some surrounding counties have some known applications, and but we haven't had any come before ELUC yet. And we anticipate that, well, we want, as Chair Locke said, we want to try to establish this on a scientific and reasonable basis rather than the less defensible. We don't think we like that. And I anticipate that this would take 4 meetings of the task force, I'm hoping. And I'm told that this is going to be kind of a burden on the county staff, and we'll try to do the best we can to try to ease that burden, but be as thorough and give everybody the opportunity to weigh in on this really important concern regarding our water resources. Did I see a hand or almost a hand? No, I've succeeded once again in putting folks to sleep, and I did it without slides. I think we can kind of close since I don't see any other hands, I think that'll end the discussion. I don't have other business or chair's report. We have 2 items for the consent agenda. Item 7A, 2, 3A. So just those 2 items, 2 and 3A. Chair?
Thank you, Dr. Storr. Ms. Rogers, please don't take a half an hour.
So it's time to start the timer. Okay, so the monthly reports for probation and court services for January of 2025 can be found online. The public defender monthly report for February 2025 can also be online, as well as the Emergency Management Agency report for February of 2025. We also received the Rosecrans reentry reports. It's information only for January of 2025. I'm assuming no one wants to discuss it. We are going to have them come to the next meeting next month, so be prepared with your questions because we're going to ask them to come and present. I have no other business, no chair's report, and nothing to be placed on the consent agenda.
You did it in 1 minute. I call this meeting adjourned at 7:58.